So recently, I was approached by someone who was interested in practicing magic, and he wanted some advice on how to start. And he was a Christian. It doesn't really matter if someone's a Christian or another religion or have no religion. Uh, my advice to him was to try to push him in the direction that one would think uh, normal for his religious beliefs, towards Martinism or something like that, that isn't going to disrupt his life too much. But he was intent on practicing magic that might be a little more dangerous to him. And my advice to him was to, if it's really for him, to just do it. Just pick up a book and do it, but to do it understanding that it is dangerous for him and it might disrupt his life, and it might turn his entire life completely upside down. And I think that that's something that people don't appreciate when they are becoming interested in these sort of subjects, that yes, it has a transformative power, but the transformation can come after a lot of destruction in one's life that might not be necessary. And to put it bluntly, magic is dangerous and might mess up your life. Now, that's probably true of other things as well. If you devote yourself to art, for example, especially if you come from, let's say, a lower middle class background, you might find that it puts strain on your relationships, especially with your parents or your family. You might find that friends drift away, or that you can no longer relate to your friends. Maybe you move to another city. Maybe your life effectively begins all over again. And, that is common when we pursue a vocation. And magic, although not something that is usually taught at college, is very much the same. It can mean a sort of total destruction of one's life and a beginning again. And to go blindly into such a way of living is foolish, in my opinion. Now, it should also be said that when one joins a group or becomes involved in a group or becomes involved with someone who may not call themselves a teacher but presents themselves as a teacher, this destruction is not unusual, and is often kind of glamorized as a kind of part of an alchemical, magical transformation, and sort of necessary step towards adepthood or becoming a true enlightened magician, or whatever it may be. And there's certainly some truth to that, as I say, with studying art. For example, which is much more mundane than magic, studying art or music or perhaps anything else. If it's above your family sort of level, if it's very, very different, it might pose some sort of emotional threat to your friends. If it means moving to another city or another country, then yes, you'll experience exactly that same sort of destruction, and then hopefully some kind of rebirth as you go through university or you become a professional artist or whatever it may be. But in the world of the occult, very often the destruction isn't necessary, but it's kind of glamorized, and it glamorized as a kind of part of this initiatic cycle, this process towards adulthood, but is not really essential, and is usually the result of something that is wrong. Very often, the destruction might be, in a sense, encouraged by the teacher, who now has more power over you, more power of persuasion. You're going to look to them for guidance, for information, for an understanding of what's going on and how to do things, which you wouldn't have if your relationships survived, if your job survived, if your family contacts were close to you, etc. And I think we need to be aware that there is an element of manipulativeness very often in this embrace of this sort of magical destruction of one's life. There are, as in any walk of life, there are always unscrupulous individuals willing to take advantage of people's naivety, usually with a mix of flattery and presenting themselves as some kind of solution to their problems, or some sort of font of secret wisdom that can't be attained anywhere else. Usually the wisdom never comes, the knowledge is always sort of hidden because there just frankly isn't that much of it that they know. And one is in a fairly desperate situation. But nevertheless, let's think about this destructive phase and the threat of magic to one's life more broadly. Magic, although today we often hear it's about dissolving the ego, in the sort of Buddhist Christian sense of the word, which it certainly wasn't about until recently, at least not in any authentic tradition, I would suggest. Magic is really about the one's will, not necessarily in a sort of thelemic Crowleyan sense, but doing one's will, embodying one's own true nature, steering one's own true course in life. And most people, of course, are happy to get a job that pays well, and to form some kind of relationships, and to be entertained on the weekend, and to drift through life like this. That's not to denigrate most people. Most people do have more going on than that in their own minds, but do not really know how to express it, or how even to reflect upon it deeply. And so it's sort of their true nature, or the things that really interest them, get pushed aside in favor of what is expected in society, and having a decent job, living well, having decent relationships, being entertained. None of that is actually bad, although people criticize this as some sort of terrible bourgeois lifestyle. I think it's happened. This goes on in every single culture that's ever existed, so in one way or another. But most people have more going on. Some people don't. But to actually pursue what is inside of ourselves, to pursue who we truly are, is something that is actually quite risky and quite dangerous in life. Not necessarily because it's going to upset other people, though it usually does at the beginning, of course. If you step outside of your family relationships, your friends, of course, as we've already said, there's going to be some destruction there. They're not going to like it. They're going to feel that you're moving on without them. They're going to think up all kinds of creative ways to say that you're, terrible snob or whatever it may be. But, pursuing one's true will, one's true nature, trying to embody that true nature is always going to be dangerous, for the simple reason that it means constant self-reflection. And, the destruction that we find at the beginning of magic very often, which again I suggest is probably not always necessary, and sometimes just simply unhealthy, that destruction can revisit us at various points in our lives, when we have to take stock of who we are, when we've traveled down a certain road for a long time, that might not really be who we are, whether that's in relation to work or something else. And so it can, and sometimes does, mean a periodic kind of adjustment, a sort of going back to who we truly are, which is never going to be easy, of course. And magic is like any other kind of vocation, in that sense that one needs to kind of constantly reflect and course adjust to come back to where we should be. But magic, unlike art or music or science or literature or anything else we might pursue, is different in certain respects. And one of those, of course, is that the techniques of magic often, buffer up against the genius, but also buffer up against madness, of course. Entering kind of trance states, trying to see visions, or maybe just experiencing visions without even meaning to, whether that's in some kind of state of hypnagogia or through, of course, some people would take substances to try and have visions or see spirits, whatever it may be. And if you're practicing things that are buffering up against genius and madness, you're likely to end up in one of those places, but you're probably more likely to end up in the realm of madness. A genius requires a lot, and originality, a brilliance of the mind, an ability to interpret things in novel ways, and an ability to kind of take stock of what is and to transform it in some way, whether that's through mathematics or art or music or whatever it may be, science, whatever it may be. And so there is a definite risk involved in magic that should not be ignored. We're stepping outside of the ordinary world, involving ourselves in things that seem mythical and fantastical, and are even sometimes products of the imagination. And it may well lead us, or can lead people, and could lead you down a very dark path in which you are unable to really distinguish between reality and fantasy, or become sort of enmeshed in the world of fantasy, and at the very least are having trouble relating to people outside of the world of magic. And that again is one of the reasons for this kind of tragic destruction that often happens early on, that people become kind of obsessed with magic in the same way that people become obsessed with their religion when they convert to a religion, and then they try and proselytize and try and convert everyone around them, which becomes extremely annoying very, very quickly. And if you're involved in magic, talking about this kind of thing, then that's also going to be a way that you will push your friends and family away, and definitely push away employers or potential employers or whatever it may be, or potential clients, by seeming a little bit crazy. It's probably paradoxical, really, that another reason why magic is dangerous, at least to people who practice it, is that it's not so much the magical practitioner, but really, ironically, it is the ordinary person who is very superstitious. I think we've all experienced, mentioning magic or the occult to someone who is a secular materialist, a rationalist, an atheist, who says all of this is complete nonsense, and they seem to be much more frightened of it than anyone who's involved in religion and believes in angels and demons and this kind of thing. People in the modern world claim to be rational and claim to be scientific, or quote unquote believe in science, even though of course science rejects the idea of belief. And they don't understand that, or don't recognize how stupid it is to believe in science. Scientists don't believe in science; they do science. But the rational people, the rationally minded, those who claim to be, those who claim that they make judgments based on logic, and they're very rational and they can understand things in a non-superstitious way, are usually the most superstitious people you could ever meet, and are easily frightened by the occult, easily frightened by the mention of demons or angels or whatever it may be. And one will have to encounter a lot of those people in the modern world, because most people, most intelligent people, most people living in cities, at least most people who are professional and city dwelling, think of themselves as rational and logical and scientific, and believing in science, and read all of those periodicals, whatever it may be, or stick to things that reinforce their view of themselves as rational creatures. But in actuality, they're deeply superstitious. you are going to encounter some problems, not probably so much from religious people. You can spot a mile away, but from people who think that they're rational. So that's going to create issues. So overall, magic can have a tremendously negative effect on one's life, even though it should be the thing that is creating all kinds of positive effects. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that magic or the techniques of magic, which have seeped into all kinds of areas, positive thinking, for example. Think of positive thinking, the idea that with your mind you can change reality. Yeah, at the same time that you see it everywhere in America. In sports, certainly in politics, in business. It's saturated by this belief. So magic, magic. Again, people think of themselves as rational, but have this kind of almost magical worldview at the same time, which is maybe why they're so frightened of it when they actually hear about it for real, and it's not just positive thinking, but could be something else. But magic should be the thing that enables us to take control of our lives, however we're defining that magic. And destruction is sometimes necessary, the destruction of bad habits, of a life that we've maybe not created but fallen into as a kind of habit that we feel very stuck in. That might need to be destroyed, or friendships with people who are very negative and dragging us down, or even sometimes family members. Whether we like it or not, most people have one family member who is sort of out to destroy us, or out to drag us down, or make us look bad. Maybe these things need to be let go of, and sort of venturing into this wilderness of the unknown is, of course, not easy, and might bring difficulties. But to pursue one's true nature and try to embody it, I think ultimately is the only way to live. We do not want to live our lives as someone else. We do need to embody who we are, and that, fortunately or unfortunately, is a very difficult and challenging thing, and requires guts and determination. And it also requires really no compromises on that issue. We have to press forward, trying to be as authentic to ourselves as possible, which remains reflection and doing at the same time without compromise. Well, thanks very much. Check out angelmillar.com if you want to learn more about me or my books or my work. Thanks very much.